I feel like setbacks were kind of the theme of 2020 and perhaps also the theme of 2021. So I thought this would be a good time to address this idea of the setback. What is a setback and how do you cope with a setback when it happens in your own life, whether that's your business or in your personal life? And I think we've all had a hell of a lot of personal setbacks in the last year. I personally have not, simply because I'm incredibly lucky to be living in Australia and more specifically Queensland, where we really haven't suffered from COVID-19. We had a short lockdown in like March, April in 2020, and then life pretty much went back to normal for us until recently, where we had a really quick lockdown in Brisbane. But again, I'm outside of the city, so it didn't affect me either. So I was really lucky to avoid a lot of the COVID-19 related setbacks from 2020, but I know that a lot of you have had a lot of bad stuff happen. But this is an eternal issue. Like, just every single moment of our lives, every single year, we are going to be facing setbacks. And I faced a couple of my own personal setbacks in the last year, and that's what got me thinking about this topic and how to cope best when these things crop up, because they're inevitable. So my own personal setbacks this year were small things like injuring my foot. I was doing a 10,000 steps personal challenge, 30 days, and I injured my foot at softball, and that meant I couldn't fulfill my challenge. I then, a couple of days later, injured my knee, way worse, which meant I couldn't do my normal workouts, let alone walking, for a good 2 weeks, and that felt really frustrating. When you're going really well with something and then something just happens and throws you completely off your game and just messes up the plans that you have. And it seems, that's a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but it's just an example of setbacks that happen all the time in our lives. With business, I certainly had some setbacks in 2020 due to COVID-19. So when the pandemic really hit, I had a lot of my Thriver Circles kind of members and students pull out because their financial situation was suddenly really precarious and they had to get rid of any expenses that they could. I also had issues with my shipping. So a vast majority of our ethereal orders are from overseas, specifically the US. And my shipping company, so Australia Post here, completely threw away the type of shipping that I was doing, which was economy shipping, which enabled us to do free shipping internationally. And they said, we're just not doing that anymore because it's untracked and things are crazy and we can't do it. So I had to start charging quite a lot of money to ship my products, and that definitely was a setback to my business as well. And those are things that are completely out of my control, like injuring my knee. I'll be honest, it was kind of my fault, but I didn't realize I'd done a bad thing at the time until it was too late. Things like, a global pandemic. Obviously, the flow-on consequences of that are outside of our control. All we can control is how we respond and react to those things. I find the idea of the circle of control really helpful here. If you've never sort of heard of this theory, it comes originally from Stoicism. So it's basically this idea that there is a circle of control, there is a circle of influence, and there's a circle of concern. So the things inside the circle of control are the only things you can control in your life, and it's pretty small. Like, you can't even really, there's elements of like your personal health and fitness you can control, but there's elements that you can't, so they're outside of your control. Within your circle of influence, is stuff that you have some sort of impact or influence on, but you can't really control. And then circle of concern, it's stuff that's completely out of your control but that you're worried about. And a lot of us spend a lot of time focusing on stuff in the circle of concern when there's nothing we can really do about it. So what I want to talk about today is bringing things back to that circle of control and focusing on the things you can control in order to overcome the setbacks that you're facing in your life. So the first thing you need to do is accept the setback. Take a short time to just feel the pain of it, feel the frustration, feel the anger, feel the sadness, whatever emotion comes up with this setback. Take a short amount of time to just really feel that emotion, and then use some sort of pattern interrupt to move past it. So A pattern interrupt might be something like going for a walk, going for a run, going for a swim. Physical movement is a really good pattern interrupt because it changes your biochemistry and it gives you feel good chemicals in your body, and that's a really good way to interrupt emotional feelings that we're having. You might have some sort of other sort of pattern interrupt you like to do. Maybe it's a hobby, something that really absorbs you, reading a book, meditating, whatever it might be. Everybody's different, but finding that thing that works really well for you to interrupt that negative headspace that you found yourself in, so that you can get a clear head and actually focus on the next steps in this process. But I think it's important to feel that discomfort, the pain, the anger for a short amount of time, because then you can just get it out and go, okay, it's just the way it is, scream into the pillow, whatever, and then move on. The next thing to do is remind yourself it's not a never, it's a not yet. So whatever this thing is that you wanted to do, or you wanted to work on, or you wanted to move towards, or maybe you're in the middle of something and something happens and throws everything into chaos, it's not a never. A problem that a lot of people face at this point is that they just throw their goal or their dream out the window because they're like, I can't do it now, I'll never be able to do it. And that is not the right mindset to have, because just because you can't do it right now doesn't mean you can't do it sometime in the future, and chances are you will be able to do it sometime in the future. So just put that pause, think of it as a pause rather than an end or a stop. This is just a pause in the process, and that you'll be able to pick things up again and move on whenever the circumstances that caused the setback have abated. So this might just mean you need to adjust your time frame. Like for me, doing my walking challenge, I'm like, well, I couldn't do it then, I can always start it again later in the year and do it all over again. There's nothing stopping me from doing that, except myself, which honestly, we're our own worst enemies a lot of the time, because we put this mental strain on ourselves and this idea that, oh no, I failed, I'm a failure, I'll never be able to do it. And that's just not true. Accepting your limitations is the next thing. Just because you have some sort of setback doesn't mean everything has fallen apart, right? Accept the limitations that whatever the setback is have placed upon you. Just be okay with that. Don't try to push through it. Don't try to... Basically what I'm saying here is, like for example, my injury that I did to my knee. It's still not 100%, it's a lot better than it was, but I could have just refused to accept that, and I could have kept doing what I was doing, and I could have ended up doing myself a lot more damage than I did, because through not accepting the limitation I had for a short period of time. The whole no pain, no gain thing. If something is causing you real pain, real suffering, or real injury in some way, it's probably not the best idea to keep doing it. There's a good pain and bad pain, and you have to learn the difference between the two things. And that goes for everything in life, physical, mental, emotional. You have to learn the difference between that good pain and the bad pain, and not push through with bad pain. And so accept whatever the limitation is, and then the next thing is to work around that limitation. So yeah, I couldn't walk for a few days. I couldn't really do any lower body exercise. There wasn't anything wrong with my upper body. I could sit down and do upper body exercises, for example. So that's what I did. It didn't mean I had to just wallow on the couch and do nothing for 3-4 weeks while my knee healed. I worked around it. I'm like, well, I can still, after a few days, I can still go swimming. So I'll go do that. Using a buoy between my legs. There's ones that you hold your bottom half up, but you can still use your upper arms. Something like that. Like, work out a way around your limitations. So with my shipping, for example, I couldn't send via free shipping internationally anymore, okay? So I just have to accept that. And what's a workaround? Well, one way I can make international shipping a little bit more affordable is by putting a little bit of my shipping costs into the item price, so increasing the item price a little bit, and then the rest of the price goes into the shipping. So that's one way of tweaking it a little bit to make it not quite so bad. But I couldn't just not charge shipping at all, because I would have been losing money. So that would be, going too far with accepting the limitation and actually hurting yourself in the process. You need to avoid doing that, obviously. The next thing to do is to realize you're in this thing for the long haul. Or are you? Like, if you are in this thing for the long haul, if it's going to matter to you later on in your life, or even next week, then don't just give up on it. just realize, okay, I've got time to make this happen. And just because now is not the time doesn't mean I can't do it in the future. So it's really expanding your time frame is what I'm talking about here, and not getting stuck in the here and now, but thinking ahead and expanding the time frame of when something can be achieved. I'll give you an example just in general of this sort of mindset. I'm working towards my 40th birthday is coming up in a couple of months' time, and a couple of years ago I again injured my knee. Same knee, it's problematic. And I was told by my physio that I needed to strengthen my muscles, my quad muscles. And from there I got into strength training, which I'd kind of done before but never really properly. And then I set myself a goal that by my 40th birthday I wanted to be the fittest I'd ever been in my adult life. And that was like a year and a half away from when I made the goal. I'm like, I'm thinking of this in the long term, and that's not the beginning. That's just going to be like a milestone, and then from there I'm going to keep getting better. That's my goal, is to just keep getting better. But it was a thing to aim for, and it was a long-term plan, so that I'm not thinking, oh, I'll get it all done in the next 12 weeks and then I'll be perfect and it'll be like that forever. It's not the case. It's the same with thinking about my health long term. It's not something it's not something you can achieve. Getting fit and healthy is not something you reach a goal of. Sure, you can get to a certain point with your physique or your health or whatever, or your personal best, but it's an ongoing process. It never finishes. You're never done. You're just always on the journey. And that might be the same with whatever the thing is that is a setback in your life. If you're building a business, you're always on the journey of building the business. You are going to have a lot of setbacks along the way. A lot of setbacks. Trust me, I've been in business for a very long time. There are always going to be setbacks. New things are going to come up that you don't expect. Problems are going to arise. Stuff outside of your control is going to happen. And you just have to think long term and go, okay, how can I move around this? And how can I keep focusing on the future and what I can achieve once this thing has resolved itself? Related to this is this idea of don't let a temporary setback turn into a long-term habit. Okay, so using my injury again as an example, I could have then just stopped exercising. I could have just gone, oh, I've hurt myself, I'm not doing that again, and then just fallen completely out of the habit, and then 6 months have gone on and I've been sitting on the couch for 6 months not doing any exercise, because you fall off the habit wagon, you fall out of the habit, you fall away from your system that you have created. So the important thing is to get back to it as fast as possible. If it's a setback that is something you can, that you have to heal from, or you have to wait for it to abate, just focus on, okay, when this, have some sort of trigger. When this happens, I will get back to the thing that I was doing before. If it's a setback that, say you've been trying to grow your Instagram and it's just not working, and something you feel like, oh my God, like it's a waste of time. Well, there's a few things you can do there. You can go, okay, I need to change my strategy, try a new strategy, see what happens. Move on to something new. That's a thing you can do as well. So you get a negative review from a customer. It's not the end of the world. It sucks, but it's not the end of the world. And you might feel that, emotional problem, that emotional hardship, heartache that comes along with that. But you can do whatever you can to make it right with that customer, and then learn from that experience and don't do the same thing again. If you have any other sort of setback that is interrupting a habit or a system in your life, then just work out what that switch point is. Okay, when these conditions are fulfilled, I will be ready to reinstate this habit. And that's really, really important, because you don't want a short-term setback to turn into a long-term slump. Another great thing to do is to track your progress throughout the journey of whatever it is you're doing. In business, track your numbers, track your sales, track your social media reach and followers, all sorts of stats, track those numbers, because then when a setback does happen, you have historical data to use to see your progress, which is really heartening. I track a lot of things. I've got a Fitbit, so I track like my weight and all my health markers and stuff like that. And it's really great whenever I hit a setback like my injury or anything else happening, Christmas, New Year, indulgence in food, I can look at the history and go, okay, I've got this great trend happening over a long period of time. That means I can do it again. I just have to get back on the wagon. I just have to get back to my habits that I was using when that was working really, really well. Same might be in your business. You might have been getting a really nice, increase in your orders over time, and then something happens. Maybe there's a problem in your personal life, and you sort of neglect your business a little bit, and things fall off a bit, and you might feel like I've screwed it up, I've ruined it. But just look back at your stats, look back at your track record, and see, okay, when I was doing these things, X, Y, and Z, my business was growing, and I just have to go back and start doing those things again, and things will go back to where they were. So tracking progress is incredibly helpful because it gives you that long-term perspective, and it gives you data that proves that you've done it before and you can do it again. And it just is really nice when you do find yourself in some sort of plateau, or when things are going the other way, that you can remind yourself, hey, I'm capable of doing this, and things can change moving forward, and it'll get you going in the right direction again. The next thing is to ask yourself, is there a lesson I can learn from this setback? Spoiler, there's always a lesson you can learn from anything. So yes, there will be a lesson or lessons that you can learn from this setback. What are they? Actually elucidate them, get clear on what these lessons are, and then get them in your brain so that you can draw on those lessons the next time something like this happens. Because it's about iteration. It's about every time something happens, just coming back a little bit better and a little bit stronger. You don't have to be perfect every single time, and you won't be. But if you can take those lessons on board every single time there is a setback in your business or your life, you will learn, from what you've done in the past, take all of these sort of ideas on board and get back to it a lot faster. I've definitely seen this in myself, when it comes to my business, when it comes to other personal goals, health and fitness goals. I'm so much better now about getting back to doing the right thing, or getting back into my good habits and systems than I was, 2, 5, 10, 20 years ago, when I just, something didn't work, I just threw it out the door and then totally forgot about it, and maybe 2 years later came back and tried something again. But I'm much more resilient now, and I'm much more aware of how quickly I can get things back on track. And it makes for a much happier life when you realize, hey, I have control, I have a lot of power here in what I decide to do. And if I want to make this thing happen, sure, I might not be able to make it happen right at this instant, but when the situation resolves itself that's stopping me, I will be able to get right back to it again. The next one, I'll tell you a little story. When I was younger, I was a teacher for a short period of time, so a primary school teacher, and I lived in a seaside suburb, and it was very, very stressful. Very, very stressful. The first year of teaching is always going to be very stressful. I was thrown in on what we call day 8. I had a composite class made up of kids pulled out of their other class. Anyway, it was not a great start. They didn't want to be there, and I didn't really want to be there sometimes either, let's be honest. And it was really stressful. So I had this very simple question that I would ask myself at the end of the day. I would go down the beach and I would go for a walk, or I would sit there and I would look out at the waves, and I would ask myself, Jess, is this thing that you're stressed about right now going to matter in 5 years' time? Is it going to matter to you? Is it going to matter to the other parties involved in 5 years' time? If the answer is no, you need to let it go and move on. If the answer is yes, you need to figure out a solution for the issue. But chances are, and I found that 95% of the time, the thing I'm stressed about was not going to matter in 5 years' time to me or anybody else. It was just me getting caught up in the small little, niggly aggravating things that would happen on a day-to-day basis and that would cause me stress. So it's a really good question to ask yourself about any decision you're making or any stress that you're feeling, whatever's happening, any setbacks that happen. Is this going to matter in 5 years' time? Or can I just let go of it and move on? The very last thing I want to mention is gratitude. Focus on what is going well right now. Always come back to that. No matter what setbacks are happening, no matter what dramas are happening, no matter what stresses are happening, find the good and really focus on that deliberately on a regular basis. Our brains are problem-solving machines. That means that they are always going to focus on the negative. They're always going to instinctively focus on the thing that needs to be fixed. So if we've got a lot of things that we're worried about, our brain's going to keep focusing on trying to fix those things. We have to consciously remind ourselves to be grateful for the things that are working well and the things that are going well, because there is always something that we can find to be grateful for and be happy about. And that's not to neglect or forget about the real problems that are happening. You do have to solve them, so long as they're inside of your circle of control and it's actually something you can do about them. So that's always going to happen. Like I said at the beginning of this video, there's always going to be setbacks. These things are always going to arise, but there's always going to be good too. And it really helps to draw out, whenever you're feeling stressed or frustrated about these setbacks, just flip the switch and go, okay, that's the case, it's the way it is. What can I focus on that is good and that is going well? And let's move our energies into that direction so that we're not wallowing in the setback that we've experienced. So you can do this however you want. You can literally just think about it. Some people, when they wake up in the morning, focus on things they're grateful for or happy about. Some people do it before they go to sleep at night. Some people journal it. Some people put it on their social media. Whatever it is, doesn't matter, as long as you're consciously bringing it to your awareness and making it a daily part of your life, because that will definitely help to negate the negative emotional impact of the setbacks that you might be facing in your life right now. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please do give it a thumbs up, and make sure to subscribe to my channel if you want more videos about health, happiness, productivity, working from home and handmade business, all of the things and more that I cover on my videos on this channel. Thanks, I'll see you next time. Bye for now.